Welcome to the Paisans podcast. We're your hosts, the brothers from other mothers, Dante, Dave, and Sark. Join us as we talk about current events, our wives, kids, or whatever else life is throwing at us this week. You're with the Paisans, you're with family.
So D, you went to get more work?
Yeah. He's still just touching up. So he went over all the white again, and the cover up that he's doing, he had to go over that again in white. He switched to another ink that's supposed to be a better cover up ink. So we'll see how that works. My skin really just soaks up the white ink. Not surprising. I'm so fair skinned. It's just really hard to see it. So he's gone over it 3 times, and I'm like, it may have to be a couple more times because it's not really an issue, but for the stars on the blue part, it would just look better if it's if you can see a pretty clear white, So
It would pop.
Exactly. And then when he's all done, he's going to do sort of a bit of weaving, sort of a weaving patterns across a lot of the cloth to give it more of a true cloth look. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but that's going to be the last touch, when we're doing that, it's everything else is done. So
He's giving it 3D
close.
texture with that.
That's what I want. Yeah. That's what I want. So anyway,
So how many more sessions do you have, Don?
hard to know. Like I said, he'll do another session, I think, of at least just the white, and then maybe he'll start to do some weaving on top of that. We'll see. The thing with the white is, unlike the other, they all, there's the moment you get it done when it's its brightest and richest look, and then as it heals, the color sort of settles in, as they say, and so it, the color softens a bit, which is perfectly natural. But you got to see over that much time, how has, that's why we've been all right, let's look at it now, give it a month. And then I'll go back and see again, how well did it stay? And each time I'm wow, we still need to do more. So it's hard to say definitively, Dave. It's at least another pass, maybe 2 of the white before I'll feel okay, I'm happy with it.
So you're waiting 4 weeks in between, and you're sort of watching it progressively to see that it's lightening up, and then you have to go back.
2 weeks might be enough, depending on how much it's healed. The last couple times I've gone, it's healed very well, very quickly, because he did sort of a pass over everything. The first couple of runs, it took a while to heal. The blue, he really wanted to get it rich, so he was working the skin, and it took a long time. The skin really took a beating in that first session. And so that took 6-7 weeks to really be healed. That was the blue. Yeah. When I say to be really healed, I mean not just oh, it's fine, I don't feel anything on it or whatever, but to where there's any remnant scabbing, any peeling, it's all finally done. That takes a while. Every time you do it, there's that initial healing period. Then after a couple of days, you get a peel, starts to peel a bit, and then that's when you're okay, this is what it's going to look like on, for a few years at least. And then it does dull over time. I did some research into tattooing, to understand, how does it work? Because I've asked so many people and nobody can give me a definitive answer. And so I looked it up online and I did some research. And first of all, what was interesting is it's sort of a bit of a mystery, which I found fascinating, that after all these years, it's still a bit of a mystery as to why tattoos stay. So, but here's what I found out. So the needles go into the skin. They peel, let's assume you have the 7 layers of skin. It goes through almost all the layers, but it doesn't puncture through the skin, right? Which is why when you're getting it done, people say, does it hurt? It's if you took a sharp object and press it against your skin, that's what it feels like. But if it's a sharp object that's, say, wide like that, the bigger gauge they have, it doesn't hurt so much. I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't really hurt. It feels like pressure, but it's not like you're getting a needle puncturing all the way through your skin into your muscle repeatedly.
They're saying the ink is leading through these layers.
Right. So it injects the ink into these layers. And then what I read is that the cells at a cellular level, there's some sort of defense mechanism that occurs where the cells, some sort of defense cell that we release, and I don't think it's white, it's not white blood cells, but it's something that comes up and encapsulates the ink and holds it in place and just holds it there so that it can't get released through the body. Right. And then eventually that cell dies. As that cell dies, the second it dies, another one replaces it immediately and holds the ink in place. in that tiny instant, there's a tiniest little minutest amount of ink that gets out. And so what they say is they find like tattoo ink, they find it in the organs, like when people die after, they're like whatever, well into old age, they find like minute amounts of tattoo ink. Is it in certain organs? I forget if it's the kidneys or what the organs may be. But that's kind of the theory, is that the reason it doesn't go away is because the body is just like kind of holding it in that place temporarily, and it just doesn't want to release it out into the body. So the best it can do is just keep it there. So it's like whatever these cells are, they live however long they live. Like it's not like a second, it's days, I would imagine. But after a certain period, and the body replaces them. Yes.
Wow.
I know, right? It was really interesting. And when you consider how long tattooing's been around, like it's been around since like recorded history.
Yeah. Yep. Is the process now still the same? Is it similar?
I think they were taking little, like what I saw is like, it looks like a little hammer, and then it has, like a flat head on one side and then like a tiny little point on the other. And then there's another mallet. Yeah. So they would like dip a little ink into the point end, put it where they want, and tap it. And they probably had to learn to tap it just enough to not puncture the skin, but to get it into the skin. And it's like doing 1 pixel at a time, basically. Right? That's what I would imagine is like, that's basically what you're doing. Just, they just have needles like, it's like a 4-pack of needles like that, or sometimes it's however many, I think they have like up to 8 or even more when they're doing like a wide section of skin, I think, now don't quote me on this, but it seems to me that now, as like with technology advancing, that they're doing more finer lines. And so you're able to get higher level of precision and to retain that precision over longer periods of time, like a tattoo just dulls over time. That's true. So the finest of lines are going to start to blur a little bit. And if you think about what they think is that process underneath happening, it kind of makes sense. How over time you're going to sort of get a dissipation of the sharpness of the delineation of where, the lines are and aren't. But that seems to be my understanding. Don't quote me on that, but it might just be new techniques and new technologies that allow you to get higher levels of precision in certain spaces. I don't know. Now I'm just seeing some really impressive, like precise work that's just like black and gray, but the gradients, the level of gradients and shadowing, coloring that people do, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. They're advancing the tools and the technology, and then also just the people doing it, right? I mean, like the bar keeps getting higher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. The techniques, because they all build on one another. It's the same way that like, football or NBA players today can do things that 20 years ago nobody thought anybody could do, let alone 40 years ago nobody could conceive of doing. But now that people know it's possible, people want to do that plus more, and you just get these insane levels of, there's like athleticism.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. Like you just get some really incredible techniques. People doing this sort of 3D illusion thing where you look certain ways, it's like you can't even, like it looks like something else, or it gives the illusion of movement under certain circumstances. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is wild.
Did they do all those types of styles?
So the guy I work with mostly, I don't know that he could do all those things. You know what I mean? Like he's sort of got his own style. And so he might say like, yeah, I would recommend somebody else in the studio, for example, to do certain types of work. But you know what I mean?
I mean, that's good though, that he's willing to admit that and pass it off to someone else.
Yeah. You watch a show like Ink Master, and their whole thing is you need to be able to do everything and be amazing at everything. And there may be people who are like, there's only one person each year who gets named Ink Master, whatever. So it's not an easy thing to do, to be that good at all those things. It takes years of experience. And somebody who's that good at one particular thing is going to charge a heck of a lot of money for everything they do. So there's a lot of people who are very good, particularly in certain areas, and they sort of specialize. Maybe in new school, a lot of people specialize in black and gray. American traditional, which is a very classic sort of Popeye, like the type of thing that Popeye would wear. It's like the heart with mother on it with the arrow throw type of thing. It's like very classic. Yeah, old school. And then there's like hyperrealism, and there's photographic. I mean, but it's all like on a medium that is not designed to be drawn on. It's like all on a medium that is curved and bumpy and wrinkles, and does all sorts of things that like do not lend themselves well to drawing fine artwork. So I find it pretty amazing.
Do you have a sense in the beginning, will he say to you, like, based on what you're getting, you're pretty light skinned, dude, I think it's going to be like 8 trips, 10 trips. Like, how do they price something like that for you, considering they're not 100% sure how your skin is going to react to it? I've done things that you can sit in a couple hours and get done, but you're doing, work that's spanning weeks, if not months.
It's spanning months, dude. When it's all said and done, it might be a year end to end.
Damn.
At first, I was asking him, I was like,
shit,
Dave, I wanted to have it done before we went away to Dad's. When was that? July. Right.
Yeah.
So I think I started in like maybe April, maybe it was March, So what I've come to understand since is like, depending on the size of what you're doing, he's sort of like, in this case, we've developed like a rapport, and it's like, okay, this is going to take, we don't know exactly how long. Like, here's what we need to do, because we don't know exactly how long certain things are going to heal. So it's like, okay,
right.
The next session, come in, we will focus on, we'll knock out the red. We'll take another pass on the white. We'll see how your skin's doing. Maybe I'll touch up the blue a bit. We'll give that a few weeks. We'll see how it's healing. Then we'll look again. Maybe I'll go over the whole thing, or like like I'm going to go back over shadowing. Tell you what, come back in 5 days. I'm going to do more of the outline shadowing. We'll leave the inside to heal. Like we sort of worked through it all that way. At this point, how many sessions have I had? I mean, it's 8 or 9 probably. Like it could, I don't know if it's 10 yet, but it's up there.
Wow. Does he have like a secretary or something that helps with the scheduling, or are you scheduling this all with him? Because I'm trying to think about how he can manage all of this, and because I'm sure he's got a good list of clients, right? I mean, I just think it's very hard to manage when you don't know how long the tattoo's going to take.
No, I guess all I could say, Dave, is it's pretty much figure it out as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Like I texted him a couple days ago now. I'm like, have you been? Things are looking good. Like, I'm pretty well healed. Why don't I come in? We'll do another pass of the white and see what's what. He's like, all right. And I said, I let him know last week, knowing this week I had some days and I could be sort of flexible. And then we just sort of went back and forth a couple times. I'm like, how about Wednesday? He's like, I can't do that. What about Tuesday? I'm like, yeah, let's do Tuesday. Okay, great. We'll do Tuesday. I'll be there, 4:00. And then I forgot. That's pretty much how it works. Like, he's going on the fly. The first appointment I set with him, it took a little while, but once we got into that, like, the first one I was there, he did a whole stencil. Like, that was all just like, let's map it out. Here's the drawing. Are you happy with the drawing? Let me map it out on your arm. How big do you want it? Do you want it to come up on the shoulder? Blah, blah, blah. We got all the placement right. And then he, that's when he traces it out. It's like, all right, does the stencil, puts the stencil on, and then he basically just does an outline of the stencil. So it's like a permanent stencil on you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Light, but so he's got his outline. And then everything from there is him just like, all right, we start on the outside, start with the shading, did a couple rounds of shading before it was like, all right, now let's get into color. So yeah, it's taken a whole bunch. But when you're doing what is effectively a half sleeve, it's going to take a while.
Yeah, it is going to take a while. I would just want to be triple sure that the guy knows my name and the design that we're working on every time I go.
Yeah. Let me tell you, Mike, he's very much like, look, I'm like, okay, so I was like really into the detail of like, all right, well, forget. So the first stripe has to be this color, and it's got to go this many stripes. He's like, yeah, I don't know about any of that. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to get it right together. Because it's just, like, I don't know how to answer that. He's like, well, you just tell me what it should be. I'm like, I will tell you what it should be, but we're going to stay on top of this. We're not going to accidentally start with the wrong color.
He's saying to you that you need to keep him in check with the stripes on it?
Yeah. Just everything like that. Like, I was even looking at like the stars and how many of the stars there are, because I realized looking at him, like, he didn't pay attention to like how many stars can be in the given row. Like, like he didn't look at but But I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, we're
Oh.
all good. Like it worked, it's fine. But I was just saying to him, like, we got to make sure that this is whatever. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what you mean. You got to tell me that. It's like, all right, let's go through this together.
He's like, I'm Canadian, man.
I'm Canadian.
I've maybe seen your flag once in my life. I don't really know what it looks like. Walk me through it. Wow.
I have those moments. How do I say this, dude? You know, he's a good kid. He's had no advantages in life at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like he hasn't had an easy start of it. And when we start talking, like we've sort of developed this rapport where he seems to really like open up to me and sort of look up to me and look to me for advice on things.
Wow.
Well, it's great. I mean, he's
Spend a lot of time with him, so it makes sense. Yeah,
we quite literally. That's exactly right, guys. We really do. Like, well, I'm laying there and I'm like, what? So we just talk and we end up talking about like deep stuff, you know. And he's a really smart kid, and he's good-hearted. He wants to do right. He's had no influences in his life, like no positive influences in his life. He's never had anybody who said a good word to him about him or what he's capable of doing, or acknowledging any of the things that he's already done that are actually pretty impressive, you know? And so when he gets just a little bit of that, he's like, whoa, you know, like nobody's ever said that to me. And you're just like, well, that's a shame that nobody's ever said that to you, because you're a really good artist. You should be proud. I hope you're proud of yourself. You should be. You know? And he's like, I don't even know what to say. Yeah.
Like, bro, I'm wearing your work for life.
Yeah. Mike, that's exactly right, bro. It's like actually what I said to him. I'm like, dude, I'm letting you permanently tattoo me. I mean, I obviously think pretty good at what you're good at what you do. And he's like, well, I know. I mean, I guess it's okay, but whatever. I'm like, okay. You know, we just keep talking. And the more I learn about him, it's like just interesting how these things, just tonight we were talking about, he needs a new car. And he's like, oh, I don't know, this guy I knew, so-and-so, I won't say details of where this guy was, but he's like, I'd say it's across the country. Oh, but he was going to sell me a car. I was going to drive out there, but I was like, he's like, yeah, but I don't know. One of my friends said he was pretty sure it was stolen. I'm like, well, what made you think it was stolen? Well, for the price. I said, what is Mercedes C-Class? I'm like, okay, how much was he asking? $8,000 cash. Like, a 2018, I'm pretty sure that's stolen, dude. I'm pretty sure that's like, I mean, his last car, God bless him, his last car was an Audi Q like 7 or something that had 100, when he bought it, 120 something thousand miles on it. He put another 100,000 miles on it before he totaled it. He was about to turn around and buy this Mercedes. Then he was like, oh, well, this other person's talking to me like this is an Infinity. I'm like, you don't need an Infinity or a Lexus or an Audi or a Mercedes. Like those cars, when you see that, think money. Because when you need to change the oil, it's money. When you need to get new brakes, it's money. You need new tires, they don't sell those tires for less than $250 a pop, right? And you need all 4. Like, it's money. And if you can afford it, God bless you. But bro, you can't afford it. You need reliable. I'm like, Honda, Toyota. That's what you want. You know, literally while I'm laying there, I'm whipping out cars.com. I'm like, okay, I'm sending you this car. It's a Honda CRV. And I'm like explaining to him how he should put, he's telling me how much cash he's got. And I'm explaining to him what he should put down.
He's talking to the right guy.
I'm trying to explain to him, like, this is a simple way you do this, Now you take out a 5-year loan for that difference, but you pay it off in 2 years or 3 years. Like if you're telling me you can pay this much, but don't invest all that cash in the car, He's like, oh, I never thought about that. I'm like, I know, because you go and you talk to these guys and they want to get your cash out of your pocket. Like, and he said, well, I stopped by this one dealer because they had this nice looking car and he was telling me he could give me for this much. I could get it for cash. And I'm like, what is this car? Blah, blah, blah. It's got 120 something thousand miles on it. I'm like, no. I said to him, please do not buy a car with more than 50,000 miles on it. Please, I implore you. I'm like, don't get the nice car. If you think it's if you think it's flashy, don't get it. Like, that's not what you want. You want reliable, You want the car that's going to start, it's going to get you there. It needs oil, and eventually it'll need new brakes eventually. But in 2+ years, you could own the car free and clear, have less than 60,000 miles on it. I never thought about that. I'm like, it's because you have nobody in your life talk to you about these things, to like explain. It's, Dave, I'm sure you recognize this too. And Mike, I know that your father was like, taught you about money, like our dad taught us about money. That was, it was always about like, you got to have a healthy respect for money and understand how it works. And like,
Right.
what you see on TV and the price that they're quoting you for a thing is never what you're going to pay for. Understand what marketing is and how, like why it's always $3.99. Is it coincidence? Like, of course it's not. It's like all that stuff. Understanding too that, people will try and sell you a car that's way more than you need. They're not looking out for you. They're going to tell you all the great reasons you should have this amazing, you should be in a luxury vehicle. Who cares that has 120,000 miles on it? Still runs great. I'm like, right, man. Right. But then, on the way home, the check engine light goes on and you're back at the dealer, or back in the shop a week later trying to figure out why the check engine light won't stop going on. And then all of a sudden you realize why they were looking to get out of this car. And it's not his fault. He's just never had anybody to like teach him these things.
Does he talk to you about how he became a tattoo artist? Like, is that something he has wanted to do since he was young? Did he just sort of stumble into it because a lot of these dudes, guys, girls that are in this profession seem to have, sort of interesting backgrounds. A lot of them have like tumultuous lives. And it's interesting to me because I see it as art. So to try and make that distinction between you're a painter or you're a tattoo artist, but it seems to be a different type of person.
Yeah, that's my experience as well. I mean, he sort of stumbled into it, but he's very artistic. He's got a very sort of, I suspect that he started like doing graffiti because he's got
that's what I was thinking. There's an easy connection there, I feel like.
Yeah, like, so his style is very much like, oh, this was obviously you're a graffiti tagger or something at some point. So he's clearly artistic, but yeah, Mike, I think he just sort of found himself doing, like whatever could get him the most money.
I feel like people who are creatives, though, have kind of that tumultuous upbringing. I mean, I think if you look at any kind of like stand-up comic, musician, a lot of them come up in maybe not the best circumstances, and somehow they are able to kind of express it through this art or whatever. I don't know what the connection is exactly, but I feel like if you look at those lines of work, you'll see a lot of them had different levels of rough upbringings.
Yes, I agree. A lot of times it's an outlet, it's a catharsis.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
or it's an outlet of some kind. And that may well be, Dave, right? Like the artistic outlet would make sense to me. He's got an artistic eye. It's interesting, but artists don't recognize the skill they have that happens before they even put pen to paper or touch the medium. It's like there's something that they see that I don't even know how to put it into words, but it's just that you can see it. Like when we go in and he's looking like, okay, and he's looking at like the shadowing and he's thinking about how he's going to have the ripples go, like he's shading just the black without the other colors. And he's shading it a certain way because in his mind, he can see how it's going to furl and he wants to see where the shadows go. But when it starts, it's just lines, it's just like an outline, and he sees all that and he paints it in bit by bit. It's like, that's it. Like, the execution, of course, is the other part of it. That's huge, but a huge part of it is seeing it and seeing where you're going to, understanding, no, the light would cast this way. And here's a perfect example. I don't know if you can see it here. Well, yeah, you see how this flares out and you see this bit here, which is the shadow of that piece of skin here, like I can see it now that he's drawn it. But you show me this when it's just the outline here. I don't see that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do not see that. I'm sure other people see it. Adria, my daughter, sees it. She's got that same kind of artistic eye. She can look and she can see the shading. She sees the negative space, all that stuff. It's a real talent. It's a real talent.
It is.
So one of the things I'm talking to him all the time is like, don't undervalue yourself. It's like he's doing he did some signage for somebody he knows who owns a business, in town. And he told me how much he charged the guy. And I'm like, you could have charged that. And then he's like, well, I don't know. And then, I don't know. I keep having to go back because he hasn't paid me. And I'm like, oh God, you don't, it's all artists, no executive skills. You know what I mean? So there's no there's no contract. There's no agreement. There's no like, let me give you an estimate up front. Here's how many hours I expect it to take. And here's what's like, there's nothing like that. It's like, yeah, okay. And of course, always to his own detriment. Like he's always giving up more time than he should, you know? When we were done with the session today, like he worked on me for, it was there for like a solid, like almost 2 hours.
Okay.
You know? Now his rate supposedly is, I want to be careful what I say. Why don't I say this? He tried to charge me like half his rate. Like, and I said to him, I've been here longer than that. And he was like, all right, screw it, this much, you know, and then he added 50%, which was closer to right.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And then he's like, I mean, if you're going to say it, I was like, I am saying it. Do you understand my point? Is like, I'm the guy who's being honest with you. You know, it's like, and by the way, if we ended this conversation and I was like, yeah, I've been telling you all this stuff, man. Can't you give me a break? You should be suspicious of me too. You know, like, but that's not what I'm here for. The fact
for
of the
you,
matter is,
man.
I feel like we're blessed. Like I'm blessed, right? And so I'm happy to like. It's not like he's doing nothing. He's doing really something that I'll wear the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to like be generous with him.
Absolutely.
You know,
And it sounds like he needs it, man. I mean, he's lucky he ran into you. I mean, good God.
Yes.
How many people are going to genuinely give him advice, good advice,
Oh.
and not ask for anything back?
Well, clearly no one has.
Yes.
Clearly no one
Dave,
has before.
If he had a penny for every person in his life who's given him bad advice, he wouldn't have to work. And when I hear it, it's just like, I think about how hard it's got to be to dig himself out of this hole, because I hear about this one told me this and this one told me that. And I'm like, good God, they're all idiots. You know, like none of them are giving you good advice. I'm like, you poor thing. And meanwhile, he's sort of looking. It's like, how do we get ourselves to a space where we don't have to ask all these losers around us what their opinions are? You know what I mean? It's like, how about we just like think for ourselves? But it's again, it's like baby steps, you know? And again, like I'm not trying to be any kind of savior. Like that's not what it is. He said to me that he looks at me as like this mentor, and like in his words, he's like sort of like a father figure. And I'm
I
like,
told you that.
yeah,
So there
yeah,
you go.
man. He started to get emotional. Like he got tears in his eyes. Like we had this moment, this one time, it was like, you know, several months ago, but we just had this moment. And ever since, it's been like, every time we get together, we talk about deep stuff, you know? And all I can say is like, my heart goes out to the kid, you know? Like I look at him and I'm like, you could be like, I understand, you know, you're one of millions of young men in this country right now who have not only had no positive male influence in their life, but they've been told that, you know, anything about you that's manly is toxic, you know? And you see the toll it takes on him. There are moments where I think, am I stretching out this process because I don't want to let go of him? You know what I mean? Or am I going to end up going back for more because I'm just like, we need to keep talking.
Or is he stretching out the process to get like the free therapy sessions and
oh gosh, right?
I don't know if he has healthcare, you know?
You're right, Dave. Don't get me started. It's like he's no retirement, no benefits. Yeah, it's rough.
Right. I'm sure he's got nothing set up. Yeah. No, you're right. It's tough.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you look at it in the world of contracting too. I feel like a lot of these contractors have this skill that's really valuable, but they don't know how to run the business. So it's like they kind of do something similar to what your tattoo guy did. It's like, oh, just give me this much. And it's like, that's really not the right amount. Or they forget to collect or whatever because they don't have an invoicing system.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure it's the same in the tattoo world. They're very similar.
Yes.
Again, they're like these really creative people who just don't have the business sense.
Exactly right, Dave. It's like a plumber, an electrician.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, the contractor who's just not, like you ask him in the moment and he's saying things, and then you know that when he gets back to the office, his wife is like, why would you just tell them? Like, and he's like, oh, they asked. And she's like, oh, Jesus, you know, tell them to call me. I will schedule with them. You can't go there on Tuesday. But it's that type of situation, yeah.
If you believe that like things happen for a reason or people run into each other, because it sounds like, you know, maybe this happened for a reason, but you're kind of in deep with this dude now. So when you're done with your work, you've made a friend in some way, right?
Yes, I have. And I mean, you know, and I wish the best for him. So we will see, you know, what happens. At some point I probably will want to get more work, and I think his style, it's going to be more in his style. So maybe, you know, I'd have good reason to go back to him. But beyond
Mhm.
that, maybe there's some avenue where we continue to stay in touch, even if it's
Yeah.
just to say, hey, and whatever, like this situation he's got right now where he needs to get a car. It's like, it's exactly the type of thing I'd be like, feel free to reach out to me about that. Like, I will give you some advice. I will tell you where to go. I'll give you the basic, just like I can't do it for you, but at least I can tell you, don't buy it from anybody who's not working on the lot of a place that has a bright light shining on a lot of cars on it. Okay. He swore he'd mail me the key, but I mean, it was running when I got into it. So
I mean, he was wearing a black ski mask.
it was cold out. And I mean, frankly, I thought it was I thought that made a lot of sense.